The reality hit me when I started to notice just how deeply it was affecting my life in ways I never expected. At first, it was just something I did to relax, no big deal. But as time went on, I realized that this habit had grown into something I could no longer control. I remember the times I'd try to resist, try to tell myself no, but it felt like a battle I'd already lost before it even began. The urge would just take over, like an invisible force that I couldn't fight. I'd tell myself it was just one more time, that next time I'd quit, but it never worked out that way. I'd always end up right back where I started, caught in the same cycle. That was when I realized the problem was bigger than I had ever thought. Suddenly, that relief didn't feel like relief anymore. It had become a compulsion, something I did almost without thinking, even though I knew the consequences. It was as if my mind had been rewired to crave it, and I no longer had control over my own actions. At that moment, I understood I needed to do something. I couldn't keep pretending it was fine, that I could stop whenever I wanted, because clearly, I couldn't. Every failed attempt to quit showed me that maybe I was up against something far deeper and more challenging than it appeared. I had to figure out what was happening to me before this compulsion took over completely. That's when I started to dig deeper, looking for answers. I needed to understand what was happening to me and, more importantly, why it seemed so hard to control this habit. I discovered that, in many ways, it was a chemical issue. Every time I gave in to that urge, my brain would release a surge of dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for our feelings of pleasure. Dopamine is like a natural reward in our bodies. It's that good feeling we get when we eat something delicious, receive great news, or accomplish a goal. But over time, I realized my brain had gotten used to seeking out this specific type of pleasure. It was as if it had learned that this was a quick, easy way to get a hit of dopamine. And because of that, I kept repeating the act, because the sensation of well-being was instant. But the truth was, this sense of relief was deceiving. Right after that brief moment of pleasure, a kind of emptiness would set in. And the more I gave in, the harder it was to resist the next time. This constant search for dopamine started to impact other areas of my life in ways I never expected. I began to notice that I was losing motivation for things that used to bring me joy. My interest in simple activities, like reading a book, enjoying a hobby, or even spending time with friends, started to fade. It was as if my brain was constantly comparing these activities to that intense, fleeting dopamine rush, and everything else just felt dull in comparison. On top of that, I began to notice the impact on my productivity. I used to be able to focus and get my tasks done more easily, but now I found myself losing concentration. Sometimes, I'd spend way more time than I should in this cycle, and it left me feeling tired, drained, unable to give my best. I'd catch myself wasting hours that could have been invested in something productive, personal growth, or even moments of relaxation with people I love. This cycle also made me reflect on how habits shape our lives, often without us even realizing it. What had started as casual relief had turned into a pattern, and the worst part was that, even though I understood the problem, breaking free from it felt incredibly difficult. I was trapped, and my brain, conditioned to chase that quick pleasure, had stopped responding to other sources of satisfaction. One of the hardest realizations for me was understanding that the brain adapts over time and begins to need larger doses to feel the same level of pleasure. I was always chasing that first sensation, that initial euphoria, but it was getting harder and harder to reach. This understanding made me realize that if I really wanted to change, I'd have to break this cycle. But for that, I knew I'd need strength, strategies, and a lot of patience with myself. Beyond the physical and mental effects, something even deeper started to surface. The impact on my self-esteem and my relationships. Every time I gave into this impulse, I felt like I was letting myself down. I found myself stuck in a cycle where that brief satisfaction quickly turned into regret and shame. It was as if I was constantly betraying myself, unable to keep a simple promise. These feelings of guilt and shame began to affect the way I saw myself. I felt weak, like I had lost control over my own actions. It hit my confidence in ways I had never experienced before. I started to doubt myself, wondering if I truly had the strength to overcome this habit. Each time I failed felt like proof that I wasn't strong enough. and that only deepened my sense of helplessness. But it didn't stop with me. This emotional drain started affecting the people around me, too. I began to isolate myself, avoiding social gatherings and even close relationships. There was always this fear that, somehow, people would see what I was going through. The shame of admitting the problem created a barrier between me and those I loved most, an invisible wall that I couldn't seem to break down. This cycle of isolation became a trap because the more I pulled away, the lonelier I felt, and the more I looked for relief in something that, in truth, only made me feel worse. I was stuck in a loop of self-sabotage, where trying to escape the pain only led me right back to it. That's when I realized that the problem wasn't just the behavior itself, but how it was affecting my relationship with myself and with others. I wanted to break free from this cycle, to rebuild my self-esteem, to reconnect with the person I used to be. But I knew that to do that, I would need a profound change. Something that would help me truly understand and confront what was really going on. I started to wonder if I could actually change. With every failed attempt, every broken promise, my doubts only grew stronger. Did I have the strength to face this for real? Or was I doomed to stay stuck in this cycle, repeating the same mistakes over and over? These questions haunted me daily, like a voice that just wouldn't go away. At the same time, deep down, there was this intense desire for change. I wanted to become a better version of myself, a version that could make conscious choices, not just react to impulses. But the truth was, I didn't know where to start. The journey ahead looked long and uncertain, and the fear of failing again felt very real. I knew that this change would demand a lot from me. It wasn't just about stopping a habit. I'd have to face myself, understand myself, and find a new purpose. Looking at it all, I realized the answer wasn't going to be some quick fix. It was going to be a process of self-discovery and patience, where I'd have to build myself up, step by step, until I could finally break free from this cycle. That's when I decided to take the first step. I knew this change wouldn't happen overnight, and that I needed a realistic strategy. So I started small. I challenged myself to go just one day without giving in. Just one day. And unlike previous attempts, this time I tried to be kinder to myself without putting so much pressure on. That first challenge was eye-opening. Every hour that passed, I felt the tension build, but I kept steady, reminding myself that if I could make it through that one day, it would be progress. When I succeeded, I felt a bit of that inner strength I thought I had lost. The next day, I went a little further and tried to hold on for another day, then another. These small steps began to add up, creating a path I had never tried before. I realized that to break such an ingrained habit, I needed to replace my old behavior with activities that would strengthen both my mind and body. So, I began incorporating meditation into my routine. Every morning, I'd spend a few minutes in silence, focusing on my breathing and being present. This practice helped me become more aware of my impulses, recognize the triggers that would pull me back into the old habit, and resist them. In addition to meditation, I decided to work out regularly. Physical exercise helped me channel my energy in a positive way and gave me the same endorphin rush I had been seeking impulsively. Working out became a healthy outlet, a moment to focus on my body and strength rather than giving in to urges. Another crucial step was getting more organized. I noticed that I often caved in when I was bored or stressed. To avoid those moments, I started planning my days more productively. I filled my time with activities that gave me a sense of purpose, like reading, writing, or even learning something new. This planning helped me fill my days with actions that made me feel genuinely good and fulfilled. And of course, there were setbacks. At times, I found myself slipping up again. But this time, instead of punishing myself or giving up, I chose to see each setback as a learning opportunity. I tried to understand what had triggered me to fall back and how I could handle it differently next time. I accepted that change is a journey full of ups and downs, and that the key was progress, not perfection. Over time, these small steps started to become a routine. I still felt the urge, but now I knew I had tools to manage it. And more than that, I began to feel a new strength within me, a certainty that I was finally on the right path. I still had a long way to go, but I knew that, little by little, I was reconnecting with the person I wanted to be. If you're listening to this and feel like this story sounds familiar, know that you're not alone. Maybe you're stuck in a cycle that feels impossible to break, too. I know how hard it is. I understand the frustration of trying and failing, of making promises to yourself that seem impossible to keep. I know what it's like to look in the mirror and not like what you see, feeling like you're losing control over your own life. But I want you to know, no matter how dark the road might seem, there is a way out. It's not an easy journey, and I won't lie and say it's quick or painless. It's a process of ups and downs, of small steps, and a lot of patience with yourself. But with each day, with every small victory, you grow stronger. If you feel the need to change, if you want to break free from this cycle, start small. Take that first step, even if it feels insignificant. We're in this fight together, and every step toward freedom is worth it. Believe me, you can reconnect with the best version of yourself and find the peace you've been searching for. This journey isn't over for me. Every day, I keep taking small steps, striving to become a stronger, more aware version of myself. I've come to realize that true power isn't about suppressing our desires. It's about understanding them and consciously choosing what we want for our lives. If you feel like you want this freedom, this sense of control, know that it's possible. The path requires courage, patience, and persistence, but it's worth it. Every victory, no matter how small, is a step toward inner peace and a life where you're truly in charge of your choices.